Well, I got a doozy for you. We're going to be reading over a report from the Office of Inspector General on Central Intelligence Agency's accountability regarding findings and conclusions, 9/11 Joint Inquiry Report. And this was released, I think, in 2004 or 5. And this area of the report I'm going to read is from Factual Finding 4, Aircraft as Weapons. And what I'm going to share with you is really astounding because what it will show is that this report is rather contradictory. And as you can see here, which I'm going to basically read along with you, put myself over here. So here we have factual finding 4 as let me move this over. So we're going to read this together. It says factual finding 4 of the Joint Inquiry Report statute state that from at least 1994, continuing into the summer of 2001, the intelligence community received information indicating that terrorists were contemplating, among other means of attack, the use of aircraft as weapons. This information did not stimulate any specific intelligence community assessment of or collective U.S. government reaction to this form of threat. What they're saying is we are receiving reports that terrorist operatives want to hijack the airplanes, but we don't know whether they want to use it to crash into a tower or a building or into the ground, or that they want to hijack the plane and use it for political means. Now, in support of this finding, the Joint Inquiry Report cites 12 cases pre-9/11 intelligence reporting that describe plans by terrorists and others to use aircraft as weapons. They would be right, albeit acknowledging questionable source credibility for some of these reports. The CIA's Inspector General already giving excuses. We can't trust those terrorists until we can start trusting the terrorists, and that means we have to torture the fucking shit out of them. The report also notes that some, but not all of these reports were disseminated within the intelligence community and to other agencies. Wow, I wonder who was the big agency who didn't share information. Would it be ta-da, the CIA? And that some senior foreign policy officials from both the Clinton and Bush administration did not recall receiving any information on specific threats involving use of aircraft as weapons. That's called plausible deniability. And because the CIA, and especially the NSA, who were listening to the phone calls of bin Laden and an Al Qaeda communications hub in Yemen, they knew about these reports about planes that were going to be used as weapons. Why didn't they share that with the rest of the intelligence community? But as you'll see in this report, they did. The Office of Inspector General's 9/11 review team concurs with the Joint Inquiry's overall conclusion on this finding as it relates to the CIA. The Directorate of Operations disseminated some reports on the planned use of aircraft as weapons, and other information on the subject was available as well. However, the Directorate of Intelligence and others in the intelligence community, while producing a few intelligence products that mention, let me pull this up, of the subject, did not pull together this information into any assessments. The team found out 1 of 12 cases. The Joint Inquiry cites only 8 as solid examples of use of airplanes as weapons. Wouldn't that be fucking enough? Among those that are not, 2. Let's go to the next page. 1997 and March 1999 are other types of planned air attacks on U.S. targets. 1, the case from April of 2000, involves a traditional hijacking threat. Another, the case from January 96, is an apparent misinterpretation of the facts. Really? We're going to get to that in a minute. Should also be noted that 2 of the 8 valid cases, the one from October of 96 and February 99, do not involve terrorists as perpetrators, but rather countries, albeit ones that support terrorism. Wow. See table in addition, the reports are diverse and are scattered over a 7-year period. we're going to watch, we're going to see this report. This is a table of uh, the joint inquiry compiled as example of terrorist use of aircraft as weapons. As you could see in 94, Algerian extremists hijacked Air France 89, by the way, and wanted to crash into the Eiffel Tower. This is the big one. This is where 9/11 came from. January of 95, Abdul Hakim Murad, a terrorist associated with Ramzi Youssef. Sounds familiar? 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Plans to crash an airplane into CIA headquarters. Oh, that's called Bajinka plot. Among other acts, the terrorist plot behind this plot also planned to blow up 12 planes over the Pacific simultaneously. 96, terrorists associated with the Blind Sheikh planned to use a flying. As you can see, pretty much a lot of reporting here that was found by the joint inquiry. In regard to information sharing with other government entities, the team found that the Interagency Intelligence Committee on Terrorism did relay relevant information to the Federal Aviation Administration, FBI, and others prior to 9/11. The agency, through the IICT, disseminated numerous threat advisories involving possible aircraft hijackings. Well, it seems we have a problem. Either they told them some really vague information or they told them specifics. If they told them specifics, why didn't the airline industry implement strict security measures? Or did they, and did they relax? Because this is 5 years prior to 9/11 when the Bajinka report was released. One such advisory from March of 2000, which restricted its focus to the likelihood that terrorists would employ hijackings to free incarcerated colleagues, noted that in the 1990s, limited reports of questionable reliability suggested bin Laden associated groups or individuals had discussed a suicide hijacking into a monument or city. This is the Bajinka plot. The text goes on to term this unlikely. Really? However, given that it does not offer the terrorists an opportunity for dialogue regarding their key goal of obtaining the release of captive members, it also minimized the prospects for hijackings within the United States as compared with those initiated outside the country, arguing that it would be a more difficult operation to execute. Now, I think this is a perfect time to start playing a video that basically shows the hypocrisy of the CIA. Now, what I'm going to play for you is a report compiled by the Philippines lead investigator of the Bajinka plot, Colonel Rodolfo Mendoza. Now, according to Colonel Rodolfo Mendoza, he gave the report of the Bajinka plot in which he interrogated Abdul Hakim Murad regarding the wish to hijack planes inside the United States, not abroad, inside the United States. So this would be an FBI matter. And that this intelligence went to the FBI. Did the CIA know about it? Let's watch the video first.
Saying an airplane being crashed into the World Trade Center immediately caused a flashback to informations I obtained in 1995, and I told that they have done it. So I was really teary-eyed, to be honest, and I don't know what to say. And I woke up my wife and told him that, see, I know that they will be doing this, but I don't know when. And I have to visualize, analyze deeply the debriefing informations provided by Murad. But when we discuss his pilot training and other training of some Arab nationals in the U.S., I have reasons to believe that that plan during that time is already in effect and is existing. They are in the stage of preparation.
Well, how about that? Now, let's read on to the report, shall we? In addition to the reporting that the joint inquiry cites in its finding, other information was available on terrorist interest in pilots and pilot training. Now, this came also with an FBI report by Ken Williams, who I've interviewed before, Phoenix agent, who would summarize the Phoenix memo, as it's called, where he had an informant inside these Islamist communities, where he found out that there were um, terrorist groups or affiliates that were training at flight schools in cities like Scottsdale, for example. And he reported back saying, we have a problem here, that there are people who are willing to harm the United States and they're training at flight schools. So the FBI knew about this. Now, in mid-August 2001, Blank sent out requests for information on Zacharias Moussaoui, who had been arrested in Minnesota earlier in the month. These cables noted Moussaoui's enrollment in flight lessons and his praise for Islamic martyrdom. Current open source information also existed on plans and, in one case, actions to conduct suicide air crashes with the intent of bringing down a target other than the aircraft itself. This information, although involving non-terrorists, should be factored in when considering the overall use of terrorists' use of aircraft as weapons, since terrorists can adopt tactics from awareness of other activities. Indeed, the joint inquiry implicitly acknowledges this when it includes among its 12 examples the 2 cases involving planned use of aircraft as weapons by Iran and Iraq. Wow. Talk about setting a fucking narrative here, right? Are they mentioning Saudi Arabia, where a lot of these muscle hijackers come from? Or the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, where Khalid Sheikh Mohammed comes from? Or Pakistan, where Ramzi Youssef comes from, and his uncle Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and Abu Zubaydah, and a lot of others? No, go to the Shia countries in which Israel and Saudi Arabia hate because they said so. I mean, you could see the warning stages from the neocon department already seeping in the intelligence committee years prior to 9/11. Yeah, let's blame Iran. Let's blame Iraq. They had nothing to do with martyrdom operations. Yes, Hezbollah, a Lebanese Iranian Shia group, have done traditional hijackings, but they don't do martyrdom hijacking operations. They don't do that with planes. Al Qaeda does that. And the CIA knows that. Now, it says here at the bottom, right? We have to go to the next page. Now, in October of that same year, an Air Botswana pilot, in an apparent suicide act of revenge against his company, crashed his plane into 3 other Air Botswana planes on the ground, thereby destroying them and crippling the airline financially. Finally, much information is available on terrorist suicide bombers employing other types of vehicles as weapons. In particular, Al Qaeda, which has nothing to do with Iraq and Iran. Remember that. CIA, you fuckers. Attacked U.S. targets using trucks during the Africa embassy bombings and a boat in the Cole attack, which was an Al Qaeda plot. Al Qaeda in Yemen, no less, not Iran or Iraq. Indeed, in late October of 2000, Counterterrorism Center analysts wrote a 2-page memorandum, blank, that addressed terrorist capabilities for conducting maritime attacks. Would that information come from signals intelligence of the NSA on a limited basis? By the way, remember what I said. The NSA were listening to phone calls of Bin Laden's satellite phone from 92 to 98. He ditches the phone, but they're still listening to the Al Qaeda communications up in Yemen. What do you think they were talking about on those phones? Operations, or Kim Kardashian's growing rear, or how hot the Mets are? The agency did consider terrorists' use of aircraft as weapons. Bingo. Of course, the inspector general can't ignore the glaring obvious. The CIA knew from foreign intelligence, from domestic intelligence, that it wasn't possible to cover up. They wanted to attack the United States using planes as weapons. I'm going to get to this cable in a minute. I want to show you that goes back to 1996. CIA officers were well aware that terrorists could, keyword could, conduct an attack employing aircraft as weapons, and some factored into their work. Let's read. Many agency officers knew about the 1995 plan to crash a plane to CIA headquarters. Now, this is part of the Bajinka plot. This is phase number 2. Phase 1 was to put 12 bombs on U.S. airliners traveling from the United States to Southeast Asia, from Southeast Asia to the United States, to have them all explode 1 minute of each other over the Pacific Ocean. Phase 2 was to crash a plane into CIA headquarters. Phase 3 was to assassinate Bill Clinton. However, there's a hidden phase that Murad told Rodolfo Mendoza, that there were sleeper cells inside the United States that were going to hijack a number of different planes and crash them everywhere in the United States. This account had appeared in both clandestine cable traffic and later in open source literature, which makes it even fucking worse, because how is it open source literature? It's known to the public that they were going to? Yes, because the media, not everything is a lie, by the way. If you just freaking read it, that terrorists wanted to hijack planes. So how was it successful, 9/11? How could it have been successful? You know, the fringe conspiracies that, oh, the government, they're in on it. They just, the government says, oh, we didn't have information. The real conspiracy is they were awash in it. One counterterrorism officer cited this case as underlying the decision to evacuate the headquarters building on 9/11 after the planes hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. You think? I think it's a little bit too late by then. In September of 99, now this is really good. Read along with me, please, here. In September of 99, Library of Congress researchers prepared an in-depth, unclassified assessment on the psychology of terrorism at the behest of the National Intelligence Council, acknowledging the 1995 plot. This report suggested that Al-Qaeda could conduct retaliatory attacks against the United States by crash landing aircraft packed with high explosives into the Pentagon, CIA headquarters, or the White House. The Bajinka plot had nothing of this. It was manually crashed into the Pentagon, CIA headquarters, and the White House. While most analysts agree that the Egypt Air 990 crash of October 99 was unrelated to terrorism, a few CTC analysts did consider such a linkage, according to interview data. Oh, it's redacted, but let's go to another place, but not in an analytical assessment. Here's the real kicker, folks. Despite the available intelligence and other information, analysts did not produce an analytical assessment of the general threat posed by terrorists' use of aircraft as weapons. The only time that the DI, Director of Intelligence, analysts in CTC wrote specifically about aircraft as weapons was in a blank memorandum about an Al-Qaeda plan to crash a plane into a U.S. city. Analysts in the DI, the NIC, and the IICT did write national intelligence estimates, blank, and various other warning reports that covered other threats to aviation, such as those posed by traditional hijackings, where they hijack the plane and tell the pilot to land the plane into a designated country and release a couple of prisoners. That's what Hezbollah did in the 70s, both for political extortion and for sabotage, and by shoulder fire weapons, but none produced broader intelligence products that delved specifically into the use of aircraft as weapons. Similarly, Counterterrorism Center's November 2000 intelligence report, Bin Laden's terrorist operations, meticulous and adaptable, notes several methods of attack that Al-Qaeda had employed or had the ability and intent to employ, but it does not consider the potential use of aircraft as weapons. Really? Among the reasons that interviewees cited for the absence of such an assessment was inadequate analytical resources, although, as the team discusses in systematic finding number 5, The explanation may be that different conclusions were reached out about the most effective utilization, right? So that's cut off up there. So, okay. Now let me show you a report. This report is from the testimony of none other than Abdul Hakim Murad, who was interviewed by Randolpho Mendoza, the video I played about the colonel, about his warning to the United States that they were going to hijack planes as weapons. Now, let me load this up right here. And as you can see, I'm going to shut my screen off so I can put this up bigger so you can read. With regards to their plan to dive crash a commercial aircraft at the CIA headquarters in Virginia, subject alleged that the idea of doing that came out during his casual conversation with Abdul Basit Ramzi Youssef, that's his real name, and that there was no specific plan yet for its execution. What the subject have in his mind is that he will board any commercial aircraft. Now, Abdul Hakim Murad was a licensed pilot. Where did he get his license? Right here in the US. Yeah, that's right. Sounds familiar? To be an ordinary passenger. Then he will hijack said aircraft, control its cockpit, and dive it at the CIA headquarters. There will be no bomb or any explosive. Well, that's pretty contradictory to the CIA Inspector General report that he will use in his execution. It is simply a suicidal mission that he is very much willing to execute. That all he needs is to be able to board the aircraft with a pistol so that he could execute the hijacking. According to the subject, Blind Sheikh, that's Omar Abdul Rahman, is a person named Omar Abdul Rahman, an Egyptian imam in New Jersey, whom Abdul Basit visited once. He was arrested and jailed, and for his role in the Landmarks plot and being involved with the 1992 World Trade Center bombing, although that information is pretty vague, but not so much for the Landmarks plot. In the United States, for an offense not known to the subject, his Muslim brothers used to call him Blind Sheikh because of his being blind. Subject seems to be cooperative during the debriefing. However, he thinks the questions being asked by the debriefer are questions formulated by the Americans, and that the information will be obtained from his will to be passed on to the Americans. Thus, the subject was observed to be very much angry with the Americans and the United States government. So, as you can see, this is Abdul Hakim's own words. There's no mention of bombs. There's no mention of explosives. He was going to use the plane as the weapon, and he was going to dive it into a building, CIA headquarters. And the Inspector General report basically says, well, the information is that there was going to be bombs on these planes, not so much that it was going to be a self-martyrdom operation, not so much with the Bajinka plot. And according to Rodolfo Mendoza, he gave it to the FBI and they gave it to the intelligence community. As it was outlined in the Inspector General report, yes, the CTC did get it. Well, why did they not share that information with the State Department? Because according to the State Department, they never got that information. Oh, I think you know what I'm talking about. Now, here is part of the 9/11 Commission in which Condoleezza Rice is being asked by co-chair Thomas Kean about, did the White House receive specific information about planes being used as weapons? What does she say in response?
This kind of analysis about the use of airplanes as weapons actually was never briefed to us. I cannot tell you that there might not have been a report here or a report there that reached somebody in our midst.
Oh,
Part of the problem is, and I think Sandy Berger made this point, that when he was asked the same question, that you have thousands of pieces of information,
oh yeah.
car bombs
Thousands.
and this method and that method, and you have to depend to a certain degree on the intelligence agencies to sort, to tell you what is actually is actually relevant.
Oh, well, what's actually relevant? Well, I would think a man who declared war on the United States in 1996 and 1998, and that the intelligence coming in from all over the fucking world, including the United States' own intelligence agencies, or did they withhold that information? That wouldn't be the first time now, would it? And this is 1996. We're not even getting to 2001 yet, brothers and sisters. Oh, no. Let's continue reading the report, shall we? In addition, because it really gets good from here, CTC officers may not have considered the use of aircraft as weapons because such activity had never actually occurred, at least at the hands of terrorists. Hold up. Wait a minute. In 1994, as said in the Inspector General report in page 3, the Algerian Islamic Jihad, or the Algerian Islamic Group, tried to hijack, or they did hijack Air France 8989, in which their intentions was to crash it into the Eiffel Tower. That's 1994. The Pachinko plot is 1996. The Egyptian plot that bin Laden told an Egyptian national to use his own private plane and crash it into the palace of Hosni Mubarak, the country's president, that was 1999. The warnings were there. In contrast, terrorists have long employed other aircraft-related attacks and mid-air bombings of aircraft since 1949, aircraft hijackings for political extortion since 1968, and man-portable missile attacks on civilian aircraft since 1976, according to academic sources. A former chief of CTC told the Joint Inquiry in 2002, and that is Coverup Black, our focus was purely on hijackings and bombings. Until the last few years, I would be hard-pressed to give an example of Sunni suicide bombings. Really? It was not part of their culture. Oh, no, you're right. Oh, Coverup Black, you're right. Only Iranians do that. Only fucking Iraqis do that, not the Wahhabis from the Gulf. Holy shit, do these motherfuckers lie? It was not part of their culture, although it has always been part of Shia Muslim culture. This fucking guy. Oh, yeah, I know. Muammar Gaddafi and Ali Khamenei, Ruhollah Khomeini. Yeah, those guys, Bashir al-Assad, oh yeah, those guys. They're the ones who give millions of dollars to the United States federal government and build madrasas and safe houses here in the United States where they operate these ghoulish Salafi jihadists, right? No, that's not the Sunni culture, according to the CIA, you rancid bunch of fucking liars. Holy shit, this report is full of shit, and I'm only in chapter 4. We're not going in the other chapters, not today. I just wanted to show you this, to show you how they fucking lie. As mentioned previously, the CIR, which is Central Intelligence Report, that went to the FAA and others in March of 2000, considered Osama bin Laden's use of aircraft as weapons to be unlikely. Do you want to pull your hair out at this point? Here we have one of the biggest operations in terrorist history, the Pachinko plot, which is where the idea of the 9/11 attacks came from, that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was part of, along with Ramzi Youssef, who, by the way, just happened to meet Terry Nichols and Timothy McVeigh in the Philippines in 1994. That's not a conspiracy. That really happened. Wow. It's amazing how things piece together. Okay. Now, it also says, and I'm flabbergasted at this report. Finally, one CTC manager told the team that when another CTC manager first presented information about Moussawi's arrest and desire to fly 747s, I gotta blow this up. Senior agency officers present laughed and seemed to wonder why they were being told this information. But did you know a third building fell? I don't know what else to tell you at this point. Are you starting to put the pieces together? I'm simplifying it. Here we have years and years of reports that were founded by the joint inquiry telling you that they were going to hijack planes and crash it into American targets. You have a co-conspirator who gave information in 1996, 5 years prior to 9/11, about wanting to hijack a plane and manually crash it into a US target. And yet, here we have the CIA's own counterterrorism center basically saying, what planes? What hijackers? It's unreal. How could nobody understand that? Some judge that intelligence on the subject was inadequate. It's like you have a guy who is willing to commit the crime, who's admittingly committing, telling you, I'm gonna, I was gonna hijack the plane and crash it. Oh, you're full of it. You're full of it. We're not believing you. I wish it was a joke. I really wish. A senior analytic manager in CTC noted that they lacked good, strong intelligence on the subject. I can't believe it. I don't know what else to say. I really. One analyst mentioned that the piece of intelligence cited by the joint inquiry were 12 among thousands received during the period in question. Now, when it comes to intelligence reports, every day, the CIA's counterterrorism center gets thousands of reports. But there are certain reports that are information only, and that there are actionable intelligence reports. Okay. Central intelligence reports. But you know exactly that the most important operation in the world at that time was bin Laden. You knew probably more than most because you had a bug, the CIA did, inside the house in Yemen. You were following bin Laden even prior to his move to Sudan. That's 1992. Don't give me this shit. You may get away with this nonsense with the average Joe, but I do my due diligence and I read these reports. And I want to share it with you because I want you to see it for yourself. One senior DI manager told the team that there was no way that someone could have picked out the aircraft piece pre 9/11. The dots stand out in retrospect more now than before 9/11. Well, guess what, folks? I can't wait to play the next video because it comes from none other than the 9/11 Commission report that some of you truthers are basically saying is lying. Well, guess what? Listen to Dieter Snell, a senior staff manager, what he has to say.
As originally envisioned, the 9/11 plot involved even more extensive attacks than those carried out on September 11th. KSM maintains that his initial proposal involved hijacking 10 planes to attack targets on both the east and west coasts of the United States. He claims that in addition to the targets actually hit on 9/11, these hijacked planes were to be crashed into CIA and FBI headquarters, unidentified nuclear power plants, and the tallest buildings in California and Washington state.
Whoa, wait a minute. We got the 9/11 Commission report saying we got actionable intelligence. Meanwhile, the CIA Inspector General report saying, oh, this intelligence really was no good. Which one is it? Which one is it? Is it this? Is it that? You can't lie fast enough. You can't lie fast enough. It's incredible. Oh my goodness. It really is. This is amazing. This is amazing stuff. Let's keep going because I'm having fun. Really, I'm not. I'm getting sick. Okay, now, the next page is this page. And let me just go out a little bit. It says here between January of 98 and September 2001 showed none that consider the use of aircraft as weapons. Right. Even in the autumn of 98 issue of Terrorism and Political Violence, which was devoted exclusively to aviation terrorism and security, terrorism expert Brian Jenkins and other contributors did not address the subject, focusing instead on the threats posed by traditional hijackings, sabotage, and missiles. Although one article examines emerging threats, including use of exotic explosives, the use of WMD attacks on aviation targets, and sabotage of aviation-related computer systems, right? Now, in the summer of 98, issue of the Journal of Counterterrorism Security International made no mention of aircraft as weapons. They probably didn't get the memos. The CIA probably didn't share those. Implications. The absence of any analytical assessment on aircraft as weapons made it less likely that policymakers, that would be Congress, would warn the airlines about this particular threat and that the airlines in turn could develop strategies to deal with suicide hijackers. So there it is. There it is, right there. So in other words, what this is saying is that the CIA had intelligence about operatives inside the United States and abroad that wanted to hijack the aircraft and crash them into targets. And after 6 years of reports, the analytical team are saying that these intelligence reports are not actionable intelligence. That's what they're telling you. So in other words, we really couldn't deal with the specifics and tell the aviation community and their companies to make stricter security measures. So not only are the airline communities at fault because those previous reports that were handed out by the intelligence community, which it says right here in the report, they didn't make the necessary adjustments. On top of that, here you have the Inspector General report basically protecting the CIA, which is what they do. And by the way, they're supposed to be impartial. Here they are saying that, they didn't have actionable intelligence. The CIA, ladies and gentlemen, as the Joint Commission staff has indicated, because the anti-hijacking training for civil aviation crews in place on 9/11 was based on previous experiences with domestic and international hijackings and other hostage situations, it offered little guidance for confronting suicide hijackers. Indeed, the Air Carrier Standard Security Program guidance advised flight crews to refrain from overpowering hijackers. Fucking wow. Here we have reports from the Bajinka investigation, the Joint House Inquiry's own findings on 12 other instances where Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda affiliates, not Iran and Iraq like the CIA suggests, don't believe that bullshit for a second, Al-Qaeda and their affiliates from the Gulf wanted to hijack their planes. Some were successful and some were not. All of this basically was not actionable intelligence. And it wasn't intelligence that could be disseminated to implement stricter security measures at airlines. Accountability. Analysis of the 12 disparate cases cited by the Joint Inquiry and of other available information does not lead to the conclusion that any specific attack might occur. Nonetheless, analysts might reasonably have pulled together an assessment on aircraft as weapons. This did not occur because managers elected to use analytic manpower on other issues and perhaps because of analytic mindset issues. The team does not believe that this issue in itself justifies a recommendation related to accountability. Of course not. Because you got to have a fucking backbone and a moral aptitude to implement accountability. You had, one, the information that could be labeled actionable intelligence coming from operatives who have proven themselves worthy of committing terrorist attacks. Ramzi Youssef bombed the World Trade Center in 93. His associate was Abdul Hakim Murad. The information about the Pachinko plot came from him. It didn't come from some random nobody, and it didn't come from an Iranian or an Iraqi. 2, this information could have been shared to implement stricter security measures in immigration and the airline industry, and you did not. And that's why I made this video, because I want to show how horrid and disgusting the CIA is as an agency. Now, I will try and throw up my disgust in the toilet.